September 6, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. Go down to the descriptions below. You can see where I thought I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. On the chart, whatever I boxed is where I actually took a trade. You can actually see where my entries and exits are with the little blue arrows and the magenta arrows for the entries and exits. Today was actually kind of a interesting day. There was only one piece of economic data that came out at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard, which is the ISM Services PMI, which came out around right here. And it looked like it kind of created a knee-jerk reaction, and then the market pretty much sold off very gradually. Then it had a recovery probably about 3 hours later, and it went into a trading range. Overall, it would just be kind of categorized kind of like a V shape. There weren't, well, the pre-market highs and lows didn't seem to really come into play as a trading range, and you clearly just had a trend down and then a recovery up. I saw a lot of, I guess what I would call almost setups. There were setups that were very close, but just didn't fit my criteria of being high probability or just seemed a little risky. So I'm going to go through the trades now. I only managed to take one trade. At the time, I thought it was good, but in hindsight, I think it was probably more risky than I should have actually given it credit for. It turned out to work, but I have to be careful for that because I don't want to build up a false impression that I actually was super confident in that trade, because there have been other trades in the past where I thought it was a good setup. I take it, it works out, but then it doesn't work the next time. And that's kind of a tricky area that a lot of traders, and myself included, need to be careful of. I guess interpreting too closely or just wanting to see something that may or may not actually be there. So this is actually the pre-market. At first, I thought we might actually have a trading range, and there's an overlapping trading range here. But here, there's technically a lot of second entries, but they're not necessarily high probability. It's just very congested, very choppy. It would just be a kind of a dice roll, in my opinion, because it's only a 4-point range anyways. So unless you caught at the very top or at the very bottom, I just tend to stay away from things like this. Granted, I was already staying away from it because it was a pre-market, but if it was in the regular trading hours, I probably would have stayed away from it. So just moving along, as the market opened, I draw the short trend channel coming down, and a trend channel going back up. I don't have this big yellow one established yet, so you can just ignore it for now. The first setup I saw was right here. So technically you have a first entry short, but the way I saw it is kind of a visual. One push up is a first entry short, then this is creating a second entry short here. So it's kind of like a visual second entry short. The second entry short, which would actually be here on the visual, because technically you already have a short here. Second entry short setting up here is a good signal bar. It closed right above the EMA though. And I wasn't really sure because we could still be in a trading range, even though, yes, it's testing the bottom. You know, I'm thinking it's one push up, pull back. It could create a second push up, but I was wondering if it's actually going to come back down. So I just wanted to wait for a confirmation of some kind, and in this case, maybe a lower high. So you actually get a lower high right here. So it comes up, you technically don't know you have a lower high yet because the next candle prints and it's higher than this guy, then that guy would be the lower high. So right here, you do have a confirmed lower high because this candle actually didn't make it above this candle and just by one tick. The thing I don't really like about this is the very long wick here. If this body actually closed lower and below the EMA, now I know the EMA is flattening out, but I do take it into consideration if things, I'm looking for reasons to take a trade. And one of the reasons would have been if it at least closed below the EMA a little bit more bearish, because here it looked like it opened clearly at the top and it flashed down. And if it closed much lower to the lows, then I know there was a lot of selling pressure pushing it down. But since it rallied a little bit at the end and kind of closed relatively close to the top of where it opened, it gave me a little bit of pause. So it just gave me like the feeling that perhaps the bulls were still fighting it out. So it wasn't as decisive as I'd like. So I left it alone. As you can see, this flashes down. But you have to keep in mind the ISM services number is coming out at 7 o'clock. So this is like 2 minutes, 3 minutes before it's about to come out. So it can get very choppy. If it worked out, it could have just flashed up the other way. I mean, if you decide to take a long, but you don't really know, it's just kind of a danger zone. So then prices continue flashing down, kind of checks around. I draw this as a potential trading resistance up here. The support, I wasn't 100% sure where it was, so I was playing with the idea maybe it's actually higher up here, or a little bit lower. So at one time I had it here, and I treated this lower section as an overshoot. And then later I dragged it down, and you'll see why. The prices continue moving down. It falls into what looks like a trading range. And I see a new low here. I see a first entry short, and then now I have potentially a second entry short. Here I have a confirmed second entry short, but while this is forming, I also saw a new high here, first entry long, second entry long. So here, since the bias is clearly bearish, I was looking for a reason to go short, and I was looking first entry short. I need a confirmation second entry short, and then I need a second entry long to fail. So you don't have anything confirmed yet. You don't have either of these setups just yet. You do have a second entry short about to form, and if it fails, if it confirms, then you also have a failed second entry long. So I was waiting. I watched it. It is kind of in the middle of this trading range, but it did kind of show that the EMA is holding. Here it confirms that you have your setup, that it's a second entry short confirmed, first entry short, second entry short, and the failure on the second entry long. But by the time this happened, you would have had to have taken your trade right here for a quick 1 point scalp. And me, I was a little more conservative. When this closed, it felt like definitely the trade already went without me, so I had to let it go. Drops in this range, it pushes back up. And I saw another setup here. It's kind of a visual second entry short, because technically you have a first entry short. You have a second entry short here per the count. But I also saw it as just one gigantic leg up. And I saw this as potentially a failed breakout here, because it had one push up. Now here, I saw it as one push up with one attempt down, pulls up, and then made a second attempt, or getting ready for a second attempt if the failed breakout occurs. So once this flashes down, I have a confirmed visual first entry short, second entry short, and a failed breakout. But waiting for this to close and being ready to take a trade, when it closed way, way down here, I felt like, again, taking a short right here was, I guess, too late, because, ideally this candle wouldn't have closed like so massively, at least below the EMA or entering the trading range again. But since it closed so much, taking here, banking on momentum, pushing it down, I just didn't feel comfortable. So I left it alone. I said, well, if there's a lower high, then it might be a good setup. And as you can see, I find one later. Here, so it's like the first break. And even though the first break is like the first attempt up, I'm wondering if there's going to be a second attempt up to test this high. But depending on how you drew it, you could see this as a potential breakout. This was already the first attempt up, and this could have been the second attempt up. So I'm not really sure, but I thought that this was a good signal bar for a short. It is coming back from this potential failed breakout, and the EMA is rejecting it, so it is pushing prices down. So I wasn't 100% sure, but after looking at it after a while, clear that when the trade already finished, I was thinking this might have been worthwhile to take a trade, because there is enough room for a quick 1 point scalp before you hit the bottom. So I didn't capitalize on it, and I had to let it go. Prices then continue moving down. So here I'm having more breakouts below. So I played with the idea that it actually might be a little bit lower here, like the bottom of this channel could have been here as a potential support. It kind of trades sideways, it falls into this trading range. EMA is still trending down. And at this point in the day, I clearly know that, okay, we look like we're in a range, not in range, we're in a sell-off channel down. This channel is rather large though, but the important context is that we're in a bearish scenario. So I'm just looking for reasons to go short and not really reasons to go long just yet. Okay, so then it falls in. I draw this channel, which I don't like it that much, because it doesn't fit that clean. And then all these prices are very congested, just side by side. So definitely I'm looking for any time it comes back up to the EMA to look for a setup to go short. And every time it does come back to the EMA, it just looks dicey, because since this move has been very gradual, it's always testing and always pressing against the lows, but it never makes a very flashy breakout down and a big pull up to get ready to short down back to the lows. it always seems to be pressing on the lows gradually. So every time you feel like you're trying to sell at the lows, which is very risky, because even though the trend is down, selling at the lows is just kind of a recipe for disaster because it can always correct. And I want to be on the end of a correction. After it corrects, I want to be able to short there so I know I have enough room before it hits the new bottom. But it never really gives you that throughout the day. Well, actually, during this section. So I just have to sit on my hands and wait. I see a failed second entry short because technically you have a new low here. First time it breaks below is this one here, first entry short. Then it creates a second entry short. Now this failed second entry short, the signal bar is good right here, but it's also an inside bar. It closed above the EMA, which is fine, and this seems like it's the first break of this orange channel going up. So it looks like it could be looking for a new high, but since the new high is pretty close to where this guy is, to take one tick above, you don't have enough room to scalp out, so it feels a little dicey. So if it fails, which it could, might make a second attempt. So all this, although the setup is here, it's also counter trend to a very bearish day. So I just kind of had to wait on this. Looking to see if it actually pulls back to give me a second opportunity, or ideally it sets up a failure so I can actually try to take a short to go hopefully write it down to this localized bottom. So it looks like it chops around. So it looks like it broke out, made one attempt higher, it did make a new high, it pulls back, looks like it made a second attempt higher. Now it's just chopping around again. It kind of falls into this consolidation range. I don't like to trade this. It looks a little bit, well, just very congested and dicey. And look here, it's just like about a 3.5 point range again. So it's very, very tight trading. I see this as a new high. I saw first entry long, second entry long. But I am not keen on taking a long, as I said, because the day is very bearish. So I'm looking for a reason to go short. So I'm looking for a potential failed second entry long. Here, you do actually get a failure. So you get a first entry long, second entry long, and it fails right here. So it never makes back up to the top and it actually ticks one tick below. But I'm a little concerned that this could be a trap or it could just keep chopping sideways because it's also the midline of this trading range. So I'm just sitting here. I'm just thinking, okay, well, let's just let this play out, see if there's a lower high confirmation. Pops around, flashes up, it ticks, and I actually like this setup because I saw a new high, first entry long, second entry long, failure. Then it actually makes one more push up as a lower high. And it looks like it ticked one, and it looked like it trapped a lot of people thinking it was going to reverse back up. And it closed nicely bearish below the EMA. And the way I had it at the time, I was thinking it's going to break out of this. If it breaks, it could bounce off this range, but if it breaks out below and it kind of passes this double bottom, there might be some stop orders here that will help push momentum down further. So when I took this trade, it's hard to see, but I actually took it one tick below this double bottom. And in hindsight, I think it was risky. I should have actually walked it back and maybe put it one tick below this actual signal bar. But I took it here thinking, okay, well, I have enough room because I was thinking larger the picture that it might come all the way down here. But I wasn't going to risk it, so I just went for a 1 point scalp. I was fortunate that it flashed down and filled my order. Now, in thinking back and looking at this, if I actually had my order one tick below this guy, I would not have gotten the fill. But what was giving me confidence, or at least thinking that this might work out, was it was breaking out of this range. And this range, I was thinking, because I was playing with it as it was forming, I was thinking, well, there's a few more touches here. It clearly broke out. It could be because this would have been considered a failed breakout. So failed breakout and then failed breakout pullback. So it's fading the breakout. So the breakout didn't work and it's coming out. So I was thinking, okay, then I was concerned that there was this double bottom potentially could bounce to create a triple test. But as soon as it broke below, I dropped in my order afterwards, one tick below. I was wondering if it'd come pick me up, and it actually came up, picked me right at the close of this candle. So I pretty much got it right at the close. And then it actually worked out. I was also wondering, because I drew this orange channel at the time, because I was thinking, okay, there might be a channel coming down, one touch, two touch, three touch. And it was kind of confirming here. So I was using that as another key entry point, thinking that there's a rejection here. And there was potentially enough room to make it down to here. And as you can see, I kind of pressed my luck that it would come down to this bottom. And Actually, as I said, in hindsight, I think this might have been something to have skipped because there's probably a better setup, to hunt for as opposed to taking this trade. But anyways, prices continue moving down, breaks out of this orange trading range, and it just kind of continues to dwell outside. So I draw this other channel coming down, but I don't like the way it fits. It just looks a little ugly. But then price action here is just in general very ugly. It's not coming back to the EMA. These candles are inconsistent. They're just kind of doji-ish, and it has this big flash down. It's just hard for me to read. But at this point, I was thinking I might have a valid support of this channel down here because I do like the touches here. So anytime it comes down to here, you can expect potentially some kind of reaction for a correction. So I was watching this carefully. Prices continue moving down. You technically have a second entry short here, but it's not a very good signal bar. Plus, it's already near the lows, so you'd be not have enough room to scalp out. So all this is a new low, first entry short, second entry short, and as soon as the second entry short formed, it didn't break through the EMA. I was wondering if it's going to continue down. This candle formed. So I thought, okay, it's a failed second entry short. So I thought, okay, well, this failure bar or this bar engulfed it, but it doesn't feel still good enough to take a trade for me. It would have felt like it's aggressive because the downtrend is so strong. I said, in order to feel like a correction's in play, you'd have to wait for a higher low confirmation. Unfortunately, you don't get a higher low at all till about here. Even then, if this is considered the higher low, it's too far from the setup now to be considered part of the setup. Plus, you're running into a potential resistance of this channel, which I, thought, okay, there's at least two swings here. There's not a third one, but this could be forming that third touch. So it's just better to stay away. Flashes through, it breaks out, makes one attempt higher. Here, I'm wondering if it's going to make a second attempt higher, and it does. So it actually makes first push up, pulls back, second push up. And I actually thought in this weird price action here, this is actually a decent signal bar, this one right here, even though it's kind of the same size as this bar. It's showing that it pushes back up and it's bouncing off the EMA pretty much. Now, this orange channel doesn't exist yet, but I thought, okay, maybe here there is a you know, potential setup here. And when this one actually formed and closed, I didn't take the trade, but I was a little bit kind of on the fence on whether I had missed a potential trade or not because this one closed pretty doji right after this move. So it has this really long tail. It shows that the bulls try to push it up, but the bears kind of smashed it back down. So in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I didn't take this trade because I don't think I have the experience to really read it accurately, especially in real time. So here it's kind of indecisive because is it going to turn into a failed second entry long? It could because this channel could still be in play. It could be a failed breakout, comes right back in. And here it actually does create the failure of the second entry long, but it seems like it was a trap because it's just coming right back up and then chops sideways. So you'd have to live through this mess. And I'm not confident enough in my read to know like this was worth a trade or not. So I was just thinking, okay, well, there's potentially aggressive bounce if you'd be playing pretty much the strength of the bounce. And you'd be playing the break of this channel, which doesn't even fit that well for the first attempt up. And you could argue that it's getting ready for a second attempt up here. But again, I wasn't sure, so I had to let it go. The price action continues to move. I draw this bottom as a support and this top. So this looks like it's a pretty clean channel that it's operating in. And then I do see a second entry long here. It's a new high. Technically, you have a first entry long here, but I counted this together and I said it's a first entry long, very clean, one leg down, pulls up, second entry long. Now, this is a bouncing right off the EMA. The signal bar isn't very good though, so this would have been an aggressive trade because it just feels too doji-ish, and there's not enough room to clear out before you hit the localized high. So I saw it, but I wasn't sure because I'm banking on the strength of the EMA as well as the support. And I didn't have enough confidence in this yet. So left it alone. But as you can see, this big green bar would have easily gotten you your scalp, especially after the subsequent moves afterwards. But you don't know that at the time. Saw one leg up, consolidation, a second leg up. So I was expecting maybe some kind of reaction when prices got close to here. And it looks like it's happening because there's a channel here, breaks out, makes one attempt up. Technically, it's making a second attempt, but it still hasn't tested the highs. It kind of double tops here, and it finally matches the high here. But this is too congested to consider any trade. It meets the measured move, comes back down. You have first entry long. You technically get a second entry long here, but you're in the middle of nowhere. So I didn't see a trade here. Prices are getting choppy again. You could be hunting, and if you're doing deliberate count, you have a first entry short, a second entry short. It's a good signal bar, but there's no real indication that it's a safe trade right now, other than it broke out, it made a new high. But what's to say it doesn't try it a second time? It is kind of consolidating and repeating the measured move, but it was just a little confusing, so I wasn't sure, so I just had to sit on my hands. The prices continue chopping left and right. It looks like it's falling inside this range, but it is also getting very close to the end of the day, so I don't want to be trading in the last 10 minutes because that's where things get kind of unpredictable, and there could be a whipsaw as people are closing out their positions. So all in all, it was kind of a interesting day. It was a very strong trend down, but I wasn't able to capitalize on it. And I don't think it was that easy a day. There were some setups, but there was a lot of, I guess, almost setups. And almost setups, I feel like they could go both ways just due to my experience and what I've seen. So I took this one trade. In hindsight, I think I should have skipped it, but it turned out it worked. So I will have to study it further and probably compare my chart read with how other traders and YouTubers are more experienced than I am read the charts today. So hopefully that was helpful.